And welcome back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. Welcome back from that Saturday action in the Premier League, in the Spanish La Liga, in the Italian Serie A, and wherever it is else you had your attention diverted to. It's been a very, very disappointing weekend or Saturday in as far as our predictions on the channel go, but because we had a lot of disappointments with Liverpool, with Manchester City, with Wolverhampton Wanderers. But again, no surprises already when if you did watch the games really. So I think we will take solace in knowing that we are there to observe our catastrophic failure when it came to the predictions of this particular weekend. But really, it was so bad, so bad. A lot of things that we had hoped or we had expected would go a certain way were nowhere near it. Liverpool did not look anywhere near like they were about to beat Nottingham Forest. Possibly one of the biggest surprises of the weekend, and not because Liverpool lost, but in the manner in which they did. I think that was very, very wanting of a performance in as far as Liverpool, this season is concerned. We'll talk about the record in which they've lost at the last, in which they've lost 7 out of the last 8 games already across all competitions. We'll talk about Manchester City's, 4th defeat of the season, which again doesn't put them in a very, very good spot. But like I keep saying, the implications of that can only be visible if those ahead of them, which is only Arsenal, by the way, and at this stage, can only be visible. I think Chelsea went ahead of them following their 2-0 victory away to Burnley in the afternoon. So the implications of that can be visible if those slightly below them win and those above them keep winning to sort of widen the margin that there is across, the league table. But again, you will see you will find that majority of the things we had spoken about, we got to see West Ham almost surprised us, almost standards, but Bournemouth somehow fought their way back. Brighton almost disappointed us, but they fought their way back. Sunderland getting beaten by Fulham. I mean, you see, and this is a very, very interesting take, and indulge me on this one, because when you watch Sunderland against Arsenal, they put their bodies on the line. And of course, they picked up a point in that one. Arsenal beats Fulham. Fulham beats Sunderland. Arsenal can't beat Sunderland. It's just the nature of football. It's just the difficulty or the difficulty of the Premier League, how competitive it can be, and of course, it's a constant debate that we've had in comparison to other leagues and everything with that. But that's not the debate we want to entertain at the moment, because that in itself can be a very, very broad debate to go into in as far as the debate on which one is the better league is concerned. But in as far as today was concerned, it will kickstart of things in the Premier League. And quickly, this was the run of results. Earlier on, Chelsea beat up against Burnley by 2-0. Bournemouth shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw with West Ham. Brighton and Hove Albion beat, Brentford by 2-1. Fulham beat up against Sunderland by 0-0, while Liverpool lost by 3-0. Crystal Palace beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers away from home by 2-0. And then Newcastle wrapped it up with a 2-1 victory against Manchester City. So we're going to be digesting those games, in just a bit. As starting off with that Chelsea game, I thought Chelsea really competed well. I thought they gave Burnley all sorts of troubles in how they deployed themselves, in how they went about their business. They had as many as 5 shots on goal. Burnley only had 2 on goal. Pedro Neto did score that goal in the 37th minute, that brilliant header, with Jamie Gittens providing the assist to give Chelsea the lead. And then in the second half, very late in the second half, in the 88th minute of the game, when you thought, when Burnley were really, really trying hard to try and find an equalizer in that game, that's when they fell to that counter-attack that ended up with Pedro. I think it was Pedro Neto who provided the assist for Enzo Fernandez to. No, it was actually Magui who provided the assist. Magui had just come on for a couple of minutes when he provided that assist to help, Chelsea win the game by 2-0. But a very, very brilliant performance nonetheless from Chelsea. When you look at the statistics from the game in itself, Chelsea were dominant with a 55.8%, ball possession. They had a better XG, that's expected goals, had majority shots on goal with 15. Like I said, they created, some big chances, 2 big chances in that game. And I thought they competed really, really well. Although I did not think that Joao Pedro had a very good game, I certainly do not believe that he had a wonderful game. And not his best days in a Chelsea jersey, but you'll understand. I thought Trevor Chalobah and Tosin Aderabio did well. Same applied to Marco Correa and Richie James, who was withdrawn at some point, for Malo Gusto, Enzo Fernandez, and Andre Santos in that midfield. I thought they looked really, really good. Jamie Gittens, providing that assist with a decent cross in the box. And then Liam Delap, I thought, no, his performance was wanting for me. But nonetheless, Chelsea walking away with that 2-0 victory that meant that they were elevated to second place on the Premier League log. Now, again, in the wake of Manchester City's loss to Newcastle by 2-1, it means that Chelsea will remain there in second place. Now, the Premier League table is something that is very, very interesting, because we're going to look at Crystal Palace in a bit, because that victory away to Wolverhampton Wanderers has just elevated them up to as high as 4th place. Of course, pending other teams that will be playing tomorrow, the likes of Leeds and Aston Villa, the likes of Arsenal and Tottenham Hotspur, and of course, subsequently on Monday Night Football, when Manchester United get into action, get away to Everton. And it's really, really interesting how the table quickly changes. And I've said this before, you remember. And then the defeat to Liverpool means that they have slipped into 11th place. They've slipped to as low as 11th place on the league table. And the funny thing is that, of course, that's where they will stay until match day 13, but Liverpool's fall off, which we're going to discuss equally in a bit, is really, really remarkable. If the Premier League table is anything to be measured on, and which is, of course, the only yardstick for which we can measure them against. But I thought Chelsea just did just what was enough to win themselves up 3 points, keep a clean sheet, and march on, because midweek they have a very, very big game against Barcelona in the UEFA Champions League. So very, very wonderful game. Then, in the other one of the games that kicked off at 6 p.m., Callum Wilson scored a brace. He's, for West Ham United in the 11th minute and in the 35th minute to give West Ham a 2-0 lead. I thought, once I looked at that result at halftime, I thought, oh, wow, West Ham could go on and win their 3rd consecutive game in as far as the Premier League is concerned. But it was unfortunately never going to be the case, because it appears that perhaps I was bound to go into premature celebrations if I had been a West Ham fan. The reason as to why I say that is because when you go back to match day 10, they beat up against Newcastle by 3-1. And on match day 11, they won their game, I think, was it by 3-2? Yes, against Burnley. So I thought with that 2-0 lead going into halftime, I thought they were going to, win their 3rd consecutive game. But Bournemouth made that difficult when they won a penalty in the 69th minute, and it was converted by Marcus Tavernier. And then, of course, Unal in the 81st minute scored to restore parity. That means the points were shared. Then Brighton up against Brentford. Again, our prediction here had been a 2-1 victory for Brighton, and I was happy to see that they managed to crawl themselves away and to victory with Danny Welbeck restoring parity to cancel out Igor Thiago's, a 29th minute penalty that had given the visitors the lead, and then Henshelwood scored what turned out to be the match-winning goal in the 84th minute to ensure that Fabian Hasler's side collected all 3 points, which implies that on the table they equally climb to a fifth place with 19 points. So really, again, it's really, really interesting, the kinds of teams that you'll find in the top 10, really in the top 10, but very interesting, the kind of teams you find in the top 7, because Bournemouth they are in, Sunderland they are in, Brighton are in there, Crystal Palace are in there. And again, it sounds a bit of an odd season up until this stage. Maybe by the tail end of the season, we'll have the kind of league table that perhaps we would have predicted or would expect, basing on the stature of the different clubs. But for now, that's the look on things. And then Raul Jimenez did score the only goal against Sunderland as Fulham one that came by 0-0. Of course, goalkeeper Rofes, Sunderland's goalkeeper Robin Rofes was the man of the match in that game. But an 84th minute goal from Raul Jimenez was enough to ensure that Fulham returned to winning ways. On the backdrop of a couple of defeats there for Fulham. Their last league outing had been away to Everton. They lost by 2-0. Of course, when you rewind things back, they have a 2-1 loss to Newcastle. Really, so it's been a bit of a tough sort of start to the season for Marcos Silva by his own standards. Of course, the defeat to Newcastle came on match day. Match day 9, and then on match day 10 they beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-0 before losing to Everton on match day 11. So I thought those were much needed points for Fulham, and they managed to collect them. And then we go away to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace, I cannot say that they surprised me, even though my prediction had been a 1-1 draw, but they managed to beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 2-0. Wolverhampton Wanderers, that means Rob Edwards was given a baptism of fire. It means also that Wolves remain at the best of the Premier League table with only 2 points from 2 draws in the opening 12 games of the season with 10 defeats. Daniel Munoz scoring in the 63rd minute, as well as Yeremy Pino in the 69th minute, to ensure that Crystal Palace equally got back to winning ways, and they took all 3 points. Again, by halftime, when it was goalless, I thought maybe we are on course to get our prediction right, that it will end in a 1-1 draw, perhaps, or any other draw for that matter, regardless of the score. But Crystal Palace proved that they are the bigger team, that they are the better team at this moment in time. Of course, they have responsibilities to take care of next week on Thursday, in as far as the UEFA Conference League is concerned. So that is equally to come our way, and we will be looking at that when the time comes. Now, let's discuss the elephant in the room, and that is Liverpool, because Liverpool are the reigning champions of the Premier League, and they suffered a very, very bad defeat against Nottingham Forest. Now, allow me make reference to this. About a week ago or so, I was part of a forum on TikTok that was discussing this Liverpool game. Actually, not a week ago, just a couple of days back. I was part of a forum that was discussing this Liverpool and Nottingham Forest game, and I was listening into Liverpool fans saying, "Oh, it's a must win. We're going to win." Some fan actually said that even if I do not watch this game, I'll be only waiting for the result that we have won. That's how confident they were about themselves. They were very confident that after the international break, that they will be recovering from their defeat against Manchester City that they suffered before the international break. And I told them, guys, whereas it is a winnable fixture for Liverpool, let's not forget that Liverpool have not beaten up against Nottingham Forest in the previous 3 fixtures prior to this one, because there had been 2 victories for Nottingham Forest, all being 1-0 victories and a 1-1 draw away at Nottingham Forest last season, because Nottingham Forest beat up against Liverpool at Anfield by 0-0. For those of you that can't remember, Callum Hudson-Odoi's goal. So, and then I also labored to make the point, or to stress the point, that whereas Nottingham Forest have unexpectedly gone through a series of managerial changes, sacking Nuno Espirito Santo and replacing him with a sharp contrast in Ange Postecoglou, who lasted only 8 games across all competitions and did not win any, losing 6 and drawing only 2, and being sent packing. Sean Dyche was given the role. And Sean Dyche is in many ways similar to Nuno Espirito Santo, likes to play combative football, can play with the low block, look to catch you in the counter-attack, look to get you in set piece plays and things like that. And he is not the kind of guy who coaches a team to come and be dominant in the game. They are about moments. And today's game was no different from that. So I made those points saying that do not be surprised if Nottingham Forest get a result against Liverpool. Whereas my own prediction this morning and yesterday night's preview, I did give Liverpool the edge. I did give them a 2-1 win. They did not even come close to scoring. If you want to know how poor Liverpool were, in the entirety of the game, they had 4 shots on target. But let that not mislead you, because their first shot on target through Dominic Szoboszlai came in the 78th minute of the game. So that's how long it took for them to get a shot actually on target. I mean, you look at this Liverpool side, compare it to the one that played against Real Madrid, and you're wondering, it's not a change of playing guard. What's changed? What's changed? Because as much as tactics can be different based on the opponent you're facing, majority of the basics of the game are the same. How you defend, how you attack, positioning and things like that. But today, Liverpool got so many wrong. They did not defend set pieces well, and that's where the first goal came from through Morillo. He did score the first goal to give Nottingham Forest the lead. Now, of course, it was checked to see whether somebody had been in an offside position. There was a Nottingham Forest player who was in an offside position who they were checking to see if he was blocking the sight of the goalkeeper, if he was in the line of vision of the goalkeeper. Now, Liverpool will really, really feel hard done by today's decision, because they scored a very similar goal the weekend before last, that is before the international break, and they had their goal ruled out, that goal by Virgil van Dijk that could have restored parity against Manchester City at that stage in the game. They had that goal ruled out, and yet this weekend they have a goal against them stand. And that takes me to part of the argument that we've constantly been arguing equally on this channel about the inconsistency of decisions from English referees, really. So, excuse me, the frustrating bit about these decisions is that for Liverpool, twice it's worked against them. And that's the only consistency. But one weekend it's a goal, on another weekend it's not. Now, if Pidgemore and the referees stand by that decision that today's goal by Morillo stands as a correct decision, then there's no way you're going to convince me absolutely whatsoever that then the Liverpool goal against Manchester City was not a correct goal. So that means if this goal stands as it did, of course, in the moment of the game, if they have no issues whatsoever with it, then that's an indictment on themselves, including the video assistant referee that intervened in that goal that was ruled out against Manchester City. So for me, that's where the pain point comes in. We must have a certain level of consistency with these kinds of decisions. Now, you cannot defend the other decision as being correct and also come the subsequent weekend or the subsequent match day and give a decision in a similar circumstance that is contrary to the one that you gave the other time and also tell us it is also right. When you have two hands, you cannot tell me this is right, this is left, and then somebody tells me this is right and this is right. No. One is left, one is right. It's that simple. It should be the case with some of these decisions. So Liverpool will feel hard done by there. But also, Nottingham Forest will feel hard done by because they had a goal squad. I think it was by what's the player's name? Oh, I'm trying to remember the goal scorer who, yes, Jesus scored a goal and it was ruled out for a possible handball. Now, was there a handball? I do not think that ball hits his hand, really. In fact, I do not think VAR were conclusive on the matter, but the goal was ruled out because from the angles that I've seen, and I'm not saying that the angles are exhaustive because there's so many cameras around the stadium, but based on the angles that I've seen of that goal, the ball does not touch arm. It basically hits in his upper chest, and before he takes and strikes it into the back of the net, but the goal was ruled out, and that was I think shortly or moments before halftime. That goal was scored before halftime. And then we come back for the second half, and very, very quickly in the second half, in the 46th minute, before Liverpool players could implement whatever tactical nuances Anna may have given them at halftime, they conceded, and it was 2-0 through Savona. Beautiful goal, by Savona there. I think the assist came from Williams, So, and then Morgan Gibbs-White also scored. That was in the 78th minute to make sure that Nottingham Forest sealed their biggest victory of the season under Sean Dyche and the season at large, because that means Sean Dyche has won 2 consecutive games, having beaten up against, I think, was it Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-1 in their previous match day. That was match day 11 of the Premier League before the international break. No, it wasn't against Wolves because it's Chelsea that played Wolves. Their victory came against Leeds United. Yes, they beat up against Leeds United by 3-1. So they get to win this other fixture, and that means he's collected what? That's 7 points out of a possible 12, because he's won 2, drawn 1 at the draw against Manchester United, and he's only lost to FC Bournemouth. So 4 points dropped and 7 points earned. I think that's really, really, impressive. 5 points dropped and 7-1. So yeah, out of a possible 12. I think that's really, really impressive if Nottingham Forest can carry on with that sort of form, with that sort of momentum. Now, Liverpool, like I said, dominated a possession. They were dominant in the game. They had it to the tune of 74% compared to Nottingham Forest is 26%. But like I've told you, Sean Dyche is not the manager that comes into a game seeking to dominate the game. They are about moments. They take their moments, whether it's set pieces, whether it's on the counter-attack, and they'll exploit that, and bang, they'll pounce on you, and before you know it, they have a result. That's just Sean Dyche, He's all about the grit. He's all about denying you spaces in around the final third and in around his, 18 yards box to deny you. That's why Liverpool struggled to even get a shot on target until the 78th minute through Dominic Szoboszlai. That's how difficult they made it for them. Now, if you did not watch the game, if I told you Alexander, actually, even if you watched the game without having seen the starting lineup, I may possibly struggle to convince you that Alexander Isak played in that game, because he was a no-show completely. Gone, missing, AWOL. Absolutely. Nowhere to be seen. No shots on goal, no dribbles, I think he conceded possession like 6 times. Everything 0, 0, 0, 0. Just a poor performance. That's how bad it was. And I'm not trying to blame him particularly as an individual, but I'm saying he had a very poor performance. As an individual, he had a very poor performance. The Liverpool cohort of a team had a poor performance. Of course, they started with Dominic Szoboszlai at right back, given the injury to Conor Bradley, Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate, alongside Milos Kakes. I think as sometime midway the second half, they withdrew Ibrahim Konate. He was the first to get withdrawn, and they brought on Hugo Ekitike. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I understand you're sacrificing a defender to bolster your defense, but really, did it work out? No, eventually it did not work out. Even when they introduced Federico Chiesa, Riongo Moha, it simply just did not work out. Cody Gakpo struggled through the game. Same applied for Mo Salah. Ryan Gravenberch was all over the place. At some point, when they withdrew Ibrahim Konate, he pushed backwards to play alongside Virgil van Dijk. Szoboszlai, did the Szoboszlai things, but they never paid off at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, it was just not a good day for Liverpool. Alisson Ramsdale had returned in goal. He conceded 3 goals. That's how bad they had it on a day. And their poor form does continue. That means they've lost 7 games in the last 8 across all competitions. Redist winning only 1 against Aston Villa by 2-0, but they've lost to Galatasaray. No, actually, they've lost 6. I think they've lost 7 out of the last 9 because they've lost 6 in the Premier League and won 1. They've won against Eintracht Frankfurt and they've won against Real Madrid. I stand to be corrected. In that poor run of form, in which they've lost 7 games in I think 10 games. They've lost 7 out of 10. They've won against Real Madrid, won against Eintracht Frankfurt, and they've won against Aston Villa. Those are their wins, you know. Now, their losses have come against Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Man United, Manchester City, Galatasaray, and of course, they've lost. They lost to Crystal Palace twice. One of those other games was in the EFL Cup, and then they lost to Nottingham Forest. So they've lost 7 games out of 10 in the last across all competitions, and that's how poor they have been. In the Premier League alone, they've lost 6 out of 10. Sorry, out of 7. 6 out of 7. So we said this during the international break, and I also said this today morning for those of you that were part of our broadcast when I was having that engagement with Jesus, JY815, I think, if that's the correct name. And I said, I made reference to Arsene Wenger's words that when you lose 5 games in a Premier League season, as early as mid-November, then you're out of the title race. And I do not think losing the 6th does them any favor. So when you look at the Premier League table, Liverpool have lost 6 games now in the opening 12 games of the Premier League. They've won 6, they've lost 6. It's a 50-50. Not a good report card. Now, of course, crisis mode has been sung. Some people, some fans have started to call for Arne Slot's head on the spike. And you remember the forum Liverpool forum that I made reference to? There was a Liverpool fan saying there that if they dare lose to Nottingham Forest, his prayer will be that they lose so many games subsequent to that they end up sacking Arne Slot. You know, and I was telling him, look, it cannot be that simple, or that cannot be your prayer as a true fan. You know, we're talking, because it's not like you're talking about a manager, let's say, that he's in his 3rd or 4th season with the club and has not won you anything. We're talking about a manager who guided you to the Premier League title last season. So, you know, last season, your 2nd Premier League title, by the way. You know, and so really, that ought to carry a certain weight in whatever thought process Liverpool may have. And we're talking about the Liverpool side, of course, that's spent nearly half a billion pounds on players, but those players have not yet gelled. They've not fitted into that team really, really well. Be it Milos Kakes, be it Hugo Ekitike. Of course, Hugo Ekitike has been the standout performer out of the signings. But Alexander Isak, you look at, of course, Giovanni Leoni was out injured. Gigi Mamadashvili is okay. And then Jeremy Frimpong is out injured. Florian Wirtz really did really. So it's not looked pretty. He's out. He missed this game through injury. So they've tried. They made all the signings, but they've just not fitted direct into the team. And I think, but if results continue to be as poor as they do have, that in every 12 games, they will be losing half of that, then, yeah, Liverpool may unfortunately have to go back to 2015 in October when they last sacked the manager and look to those days of Brendan Rodgers, who had missed out on the Premier League title for 2013, 2014. Oh, no. Yes, 2013, 2014. When, you know, they drew against Crystal Palace. No, was it against Crystal Palace or Newcastle? That, anyway, I think it was Crystal Palace of Dwight Gale and Nathaniel Klein. No, not Nathaniel Klein, but Dwight Gale was in that team. When they lost to Chelsea by 2-0, I remember Steven Gerrard in Istanbul, and Manchester City came and won the Premier League title. So really, and then the subsequent season, 2015, that's when Brendan Rodgers gets the sack, and they bring in Jurgen Klopp, who was there between 2015 and, of course, 2024 there. So really, that was the game in itself. Then quickly, Manchester City lost to Newcastle by 2-1. Very, very brilliant game of football. Newcastle turned up You remember when I told you that if Newcastle were to be without their midfield trio of Sandro Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes, and Jolinton, were bound to struggle in this game? Fortunately for them, those players made it to the game and they made the difference. Harvey Barnes, of course, stealing all the bragging rights, having scored a brace in that game that helped Newcastle win the game. But make no mistake, Newcastle created the best goal scoring opportunities. At least I thought to myself, because Nick Voltmada could have easily had the hat trick in that game. Of course, I think one of the moments he was offside. Manchester City dominated possession, as you'd expect, to the tune of 68% compared to 32% of Newcastle. But when you look at other statistics, Newcastle had 5 shots on target compared to Manchester City's 4. Manchester City overall had 17 shots on goal. Newcastle had 9. But who was more effective? Newcastle had the better XG to the tune of 2.24 compared to Manchester City's 1.88. So that's how good they were, Newcastle. That's how effective they were. But like I said, if Nick Voltmada had pounced on the opportunities that he got in that game, then probably maybe Newcastle win it 4-2 or even 5-2. Because the reason as why I say 4-2 or 5-2 is because earlier on, before the deadlock was broken, Bart Erling Haaland missed a golden opportunity in the first half when the goalkeeper was in no man's land. I think it's Malik Theo who ran to the rescue, but he blazed that ball wide, of the mark. So really, I must commend Newcastle in how disciplined they were, in how they held it together, because when they scored that goal, and through Harvey Barnes, that gave them the lead, and that was in the 63rd minute. Only about 5 minutes later, or 4 minutes later, they conceded the equalizer from Ruben Diaz, and then, they come 2 minutes later, arguably about 2 minutes later, then they restore that lead, in the 70th minute. Of course, it was checked by VAR because there was a potential offside from Bruno Guimaraes, but the goal was cleared to have stood, and it did eventually win them the game. Of course, it had a nervous ending to it because Manchester City were again dominating the ball. They were taking the ball to Newcastle, but Newcastle were equally winning the ball quite deeply and taking it to Manchester City. They had a couple of runs in there, although they were never clinical with some of their opportunities. There's one moment where Sandro Tonali gets dispossessed in the box of Manchester City because he could not take away the shot quite quickly enough. I do not remember the other player that also had a running towards the goalkeeper, and he could not make good of that. But also, Gianluigi Donnarumma made some brilliant saves in that game. Some really, really brilliant saves in that game. For those of you that were watching the game, he denied Nick Voltmada on more than 2 occasions already. So very, very interesting game. Now, you remember what I told you, that regardless of how the results went, Arsenal are going to be under pressure. If Man City, Liverpool won, they're going to be under pressure that their point difference at the top has been diminished. Now, Man City have not won, nor have Liverpool won. That means the point difference remains the same at 6, I think, and 8. Sorry, at 4 and 8 respectively. Now, Arsenal are under pressure to win to expand that gap. And the reason as why I point to Manchester City and Liverpool is because they are arguably on paper, but also by pedigree of recent seasons, Arsenal's biggest title rivals. So that's very important. Now, Chelsea have also shortened that gap to 3 points. So either way, lose or win for those respective teams, Arsenal are always going to be under pressure going into their own fixture against Tottenham Hotspur on Super Sunday. So really, really, that one is there to look forward to as well. But yeah, at the table, like I said, Arsenal remained at the summit of the league table with 26 points, with Chelsea coming second with 23 points, Man City third, 22 points, Crystal Palace fourth with 20 points, Brighton fifth, 19 points, Sunderland 19 points in 6th place. Same applies to a 7th place. Bournemouth and Tottenham Hotspur come 8th with 18 points. Same applies to Aston Villa in there, who are in action against Leeds. And then Manchester United complete the top 10 with 18 points, while Liverpool, who are in 11th place, are equally at 18 points. The bottom three have now changed as that draw elevated, West Ham United out of the relegation places, as well as that victory for Nottingham Forest pushed them out of the bottom three. So you do have Wolverhampton Wanderers, Leeds, Burnley in that bottom part of the table. So very, very interesting stuff in there. So do not miss out on tomorrow's action that will be coming your way, really. And then, like I've said, at 5 p.m., Aston Villa will be in action against Leeds, while at 7:30 p.m., Arsenal will take on Tottenham Hotspurs. In as far as Super Sunday in the Premier League is concerned. Elsewhere, in the Spanish La Liga, as we speak, Villarreal and Real Mallorca, that game is 1-1, while I was catching up on the Napoli game against Atlanta, and Napoli were leading by 2-0 at halftime, and now they are leading, I think, by 3-1 in the second half. So that's the game against Atlanta, that they have been having there. So really, really interesting stuff coming there from the Italian Serie A. But like I said, in the Spanish La Liga, Deportivo Alaves lost to Celta Vigo by 0-0. Barcelona put 4 past Athletic Bilbao, who were reduced to 10 men in the second half thanks to a red card that went to Orhan Sunset. But Robert Lewandowski opened the account for Barcelona in the 4th minute, while Ferran Torres made sure it was 2-0 going into halftime. Fermin Lopez made it to 3-0 in as early as the 48th minute. That was 3 minutes into the second stanza. And then Ferran Torres completed the route with that goal in the 90th minute, meaning he picked up a brace on the night. And then Osasuna lost to Real Sociedad by 3-1. Like I said, Real Sociedad continue with their rise up and about. Meanwhile, Gerard Moreno is the one that kept the lead to Villarreal in that game that is in the 55th minute, while Costa restored parity. Real Sociedad are now 10th with 16 points in 13 games. At some point, they were among the bottom teams on the La Liga standings, but as we speak, it's Oviedo, Levante, and Girona occupying the bottom 3, while Barcelona have moved to the summit of the La Liga standings following that 4-0 victory against Athletic Bilbao with a superior goal difference compared to Real Madrid, who have slipped into second place there. So, but Real Madrid in action on Super Sunday against Elche. I think that will be the late kickoff in as far as the Spanish La Liga is concerned. So do not miss out on that action. In Germany, Augsburg beat up against Hamburg SV by 0-0. Bayern Munich put 6 past Freiburg at one point. Bayern Munich had to restore parity to make it 2-2. And I think it was Michael Olise who scored that goal that made it 2-2 there. But Freiburg took, a 2-0 lead through Suzuki and Manzambi there, scoring in the 12th and 17th minute to make it, 2-0. Hi Pedri, how are you doing, my brother? You're saying Sulabulungi nyo nawe oliotia jendisebo ogambotia, my brother Pedri. And then Carl did score to pull one back, and then before halftime, Michael Olise scored to make it 2-2. Then you had Diet Upamecano, Hurricane, Nicholas Jackson, and another from Michael Olise to complete that 6-2 victory for Bayern Munich against Freiburg. That means Bayern Munich remain unbeaten in as far as the Bundesliga is concerned, having recorded only one draw. I think that came against Union Berlin. I predicted score right. You had said 4-1, but it was 4-0. But yeah, as I was, catching up on that game for Barcelona, I kept on thinking to myself, wow, Pedri saw this coming. He saw the 4 goals coming. And I remember for so long it was 3-0, and I kept on waiting for that 4th goal to come, and it eventually came through Ferran Torres. So yeah, congratulations to you, Pedri. Barcelona are returning to winning ways at the Camp Nou there. Anyways, Stuttgart shared the spoils in a 3-3 draw against Borussia Dortmund, while Heidenheim lost to Borussia Mönchengladbach by 3-0. Wolfsburg lost to Bayer Leverkusen in a 3-1 defeat, while Eintracht Frankfurt managed to overcome Cologne, beating them by 4-3. In the Italian Serie A, it was 3-3 between Cagliari and Genoa, while Udinese lost to Bologna in a 3-0 defeat. Juventus and Fiorentina shared the spoils in a 1-all draw. Looks like Juventus continue with their continuous draws. It's draw after draw for Juventus. I do not know why that is the case. But yeah, like I said, as we speak, Napoli are leading by 3-1 against Atlanta. But maybe briefly about the German Bundesliga table. No surprises. Bayern Munich are in the lead on that one. 10 victories out of 11, so they're at 31 points following that one draw for them, while Bayer Leverkusen occupy the second place with 23 points. That's 8 points behind the leaders. Looks like Bayer Leverkusen made the right decision in sacking Erik ten Hag after only 2 match days in charge of the club. So they bounced themselves way back up. Borussia Dortmund come third with 22 points, while RB Leipzig complete the top 4 with 22 points, as many as a 5th placed VfB Stuttgart. So yeah, and then in the Italian Serie A, if Napoli go ahead and win this game, as it appears to be the case, then they will move to the summit of the Italian Serie A with 25 points, are waiting for the Milan derby that will come tomorrow when they take on Inter against AC Milan, while AC Roma will equally be in action on Sunday. In the French League 1, Lens beat up against Strasbourg by 0-0, while Monaco lost to Stade Rennes in a 4-1 rout. PSG are currently leading against Le Havre by 1-0 as we speak. That goal has been scored by Lee Kang-in. For those of you that care to know what is happening that side. So those are the developments from your favorite top 5 leagues in Europe. Anyways, guys, because we did come late, allow me wrap this one up here because it's 20 minutes past midnight. Thank you so much, Pedri, and every single one of you that has managed to catch this late night podcast. I wish you a blessed night and a wonderful Sunday ahead. Let's do this again tomorrow at 11 p.m. because there's no Sunday morning broadcast. So yeah, I give you a break so that you go tend to, it's church, it's what, easy Sunday, let's sleep in, those kinds of things. So stay blessed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.